Blake Torres had been walking for 6 hours straight, and the twin sons of Draca 7 weren't even at their peak yet. A third son would join them around noon. That's when things got really interesting. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and adjusted the supply pack on his shoulders. 30 kilos of medical equipment, water purification tablets, and emergency rations. Standard cargo run. Nothing fancy. The kind of work that kept freelance haulers like him moving from one edge of the galaxy to another. Most species wouldn't even attempt this crossing on foot. The Velkari used hoversleds with cooling systems. The Thornbacks traveled in groups with portable shade generators. Even the tough-as-nails Krovan mercs insisted on climate suits for desert runs. But Blake? He had a hat, some sunscreen, and the kind of stubborn human biology that had conquered Earth's deserts thousands of years before anyone figured out air conditioning. His body sweated. His heart rate adjusted. His legs just kept moving. That's what humans did best. They endured. The landscape around him looked like something out of a nightmare. Crystalline sand that reflected the sunlight in blinding waves. Rock formations twisted by centuries of heat into strange, melted shapes. The remains of what used to be a river carved through the valley like a scar. Now it was just cracked earth and dust. Blake had seen the settlements on his way in. Burned out. Empty. The draconids who lived here were somewhere between lizards and dragons, massive reptilian creatures with wings and scales that shimmered like oil on water. Beautiful people. Proud warriors who'd once ruled half this sector before they decided peace was more valuable than conquest. Now they were dying of thirst. He'd passed 3 abandoned villages already. Saw the drag marks in the sand where families had packed up everything they could carry and headed toward the mountains. Hoping for underground springs. Praying for rain that never came. The Galactic Council had held meetings about it. Blake heard the broadcasts. Lots of concerned speeches. Lots of economic impact reports. The conclusion? Helping the draconids wasn't strategically viable. Too expensive. Too remote. Not enough political return on investment. That's how governments talked. Like suffering had a price tag, and some prices were just too high. Blake kicked a stone and watched it skitter across the hardpan. His canteen sloshed at his hip. 3 liters. Enough for 3 days if he was careful. Enough for 2 days if he was smart. He'd make it work. He always did. The trade road stretched ahead like a ribbon of darker sand, worn down by centuries of caravans. Now it was just him. Solo. The way he preferred it. No crew to worry about. No one to slow him down. Just one foot in front of the other until the job was done. A hot wind blew across the flats, carrying the smell of scorched rock and something else. Something organic and burnt. Blake's nose wrinkled. Probably a dead animal. Maybe one of those 6-legged grazers the draconids used to herd before the drought killed them all. He thought about Earth sometimes. About the Mojave Desert where his grandfather used to take him camping. The old man had taught him how to find water in dry creek beds, how to read the land, how to keep moving when your brain screamed at you to stop. Humans are built for this, his grandfather used to say. We're not the fastest. Not the strongest. But we don't quit. That's our superpower. Blake smiled at the memory. The old man would have loved this. Walking across an alien desert on a planet 100 light-years from home, doing a job nobody else wanted to do because it was too hard and too hot. The supply station at Wellspring Outpost was 3 days northeast. They needed these medical supplies. The drought had brought diseases the draconids hadn't seen in generations. Blake didn't know if his delivery would save lives or just delay the inevitable, but that wasn't his call to make. His job was to walk. So he walked. The suns climbed higher. The temperature gauge on his wristcom ticked past 50 Celsius. He took a small sip from his canteen. Swished it around his mouth. Swallowed slowly. Discipline. That's what survival took. Ahead, the road curved around a rocky outcrop. Blake could see heat shimmer rising off the stones like ghosts. Beautiful and deadly. Just another day in paradise. He didn't know it yet, but his life was about to change in ways he couldn't imagine. Sometimes destiny doesn't announce itself. Sometimes it just collapses in the road ahead, desperate and dying, and asks for a drink. Blake rounded the rocky outcrop and that's when he saw it. A shape in the middle of the road. Small. Dark against the pale sand. At first he thought it was a boulder that had rolled down from the cliffs. Then the shape moved. His hand went to the pistol at his belt out of pure instinct. You don't survive long as a solo hauler without good reflexes. But he relaxed when he realized what he was looking at. Not a threat. Not a predator. A kid. A draconid kid, couldn't be more than 7 or 8 in human years. Small for his species, maybe chest-high to Blake. Scales that should have shimmered like peacock feathers were dull and flaking. Wings draped limply across his back like broken umbrellas. The kid was crawling. Actually crawling on hands and knees toward Blake, leaving a drag mark in the sand behind him. Blake broke into a run. His pack bounced hard against his spine, but he didn't care. He dropped to his knees beside the kid, kicking up a cloud of dust. Up close it was worse than he thought. The kid's eyes were sunken, unfocused. His tongue, usually bright purple in healthy draconids, was gray and swollen. Breathing came in short, desperate gasps. Hey, I got you, Blake said, reaching out carefully. Draconids had spines along their backs that could cut if you grabbed wrong. What are you doing out here alone? The kid's head lifted slowly, like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Those eyes tried to focus on Blake's face. His mouth opened but no sound came out at first. Just a dry clicking from the back of his throat. Blake had seen dehydration before. Seen it in humans, in animals, even in aliens. This kid was maybe hours from death. Maybe less. Water, the kid finally whispered. The word came out cracked and broken. He reached one clawed hand toward Blake's canteen. Please, sir. Just one sip. Just one. Blake looked down at the canteen hanging from his belt. 3 liters. His only water for the next 3 days. The math was simple and brutal. Without water in this heat, a human could last maybe 48 hours if they were tough and lucky. Less if they kept moving. He'd done 3-day desert crossings before on less. Found moisture in cactus-equivalent plants. Sucked dew off rocks at dawn. Human stubbornness and creativity had gotten him through worse. But this kid? He didn't have 48 hours. He probably didn't have 4. Just a sip, the kid begged again. His voice broke. Tears tried to form but there wasn't enough moisture in his body to make them. Please. My family. I got lost. Please. Blake's hand touched the canteen. He unscrewed the cap slowly. The kid's eyes locked onto it like it was the most precious thing in the universe. Which, out here, it was. Every logical part of Blake's brain was screaming at him. You need that water. You've got miles to go. You've got a job to finish. People are counting on you. This kid is already too far gone. Save yourself. That's what any smart person would do. That's what the survival manual said. Secure your own safety first. You can't help anyone if you're dead. Blake had read those manuals. Passed the tests. Knew the rules. He also knew that rules were just words, and words didn't mean much when a dying kid was looking at you. He pulled the canteen free and held it out. Not for a sip. He placed the whole thing in the kid's trembling claws. Both of the kid's hands wrapped around it like he was afraid it might vanish. Drink it all, Blake said quietly. The kid stared at him. Confusion mixed with desperate hope. All? Every drop. Your body needs it more than mine. But you? I'll figure it out. That's what humans do. We figure things out. Blake kept his voice steady, calm. Inside, part of him was already panicking, already calculating odds and distances. He shoved that voice down deep. Come on, kid. Drink. The kid lifted the canteen with shaking hands and drank. And drank. And drank. Water spilled down his chin, soaked into his scales. Blake watched the kid's throat work, watched his body absorb the liquid like parched earth in the first rain. It took maybe 2 minutes for the kid to drain the entire canteen. When he finished, he lowered it slowly, breathing hard. Already his eyes looked clearer. His scales had a tiny bit more shine. Thank you, the kid whispered. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Blake took the empty canteen back and clipped it to his belt. Weird how much lighter it felt. How much heavier everything else suddenly seemed. Where's your family? Blake asked. The kid pointed vaguely northeast. Rockfall Camp. 3 hours. I got lost chasing a sandhopper. Thought I could find my way back but... His voice trailed off. 3 hours for a healthy draconid. 6 for an exhausted kid. Blake looked at the suns overhead, then at his empty canteen, then at the kid who was alive because of a decision that might kill them both. All right, Blake said, standing up and brushing sand off his knees. Let's get you home. Blake was halfway to Rockfall Camp, the kid walking steadily beside him now, when he noticed they weren't alone. An old draconid emerged from behind a boulder formation. Female, judging by the crest patterns. Ancient, judging by the scars and the way her scales had faded to silver. She was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with wings that looked like they'd seen 1,000 battles. The kid gasped. Elder Rothka. The old Draconid's eyes were fixed on Blake. Not hostile, but intense. Like she was looking through him, past him, into something deeper. She approached slowly, her tail leaving a track in the sand behind her. "You gave him your water," she said. Her voice rumbled like distant thunder. "All of it?" Blake shrugged, suddenly feeling awkward under that stare. "Kid needed it. I watched from the rocks. I was tracking him. Saw everything." She moved closer, towering over Blake. "Do you understand what you have done, human? Kept him alive, I hope." The elder made a sound deep in her chest. Not quite a laugh. Not quite a growl. "You have done far more than that." She turned to the kid. "Run ahead. Tell the camp to prepare. Tell them the water bearer has come." The kid looked between them, confused but obedient. He took off running, his recovered energy obvious in every step. Blake watched him go, then looked back at the elder. "Water bearer? That is what you are now. What you will always be." She studied Blake's face. "Among my people, water is life. But more than that. Water is soul. Water is bond. We do not share water lightly. Look, I was just helping a kid who. You gave him everything." Her voice cut through his words like a blade. "Not a sip. Not half. Everything. You condemned yourself to possible death to save a stranger's child. Do you understand? In 5,000 years of Draconid history, such an act creates a debt that cannot be repaid. Only honored." Blake was starting to get uncomfortable. "I don't want anything in return." "That is precisely why you will receive everything." The elder's eyes gleamed. "You have triggered the Ashkeeper's debt. Ancient law. Sacred law. When a life is saved through total sacrifice, when someone gives all they have with no expectation of return, the debt extends to both our peoples. Forever. That seems excessive. To you, perhaps. To us? You have shown what honor truly means." She gestured at the empty canteen on his belt. "Other species would have calculated. Measured. Given the minimum required. Humans? You gave maximum when minimum would have sufficed. That is why we will stand with you." Word spread fast. Faster than Blake thought possible. By the time he reached Rockfall Camp, dozens of Draconids were waiting. They bowed as he approached. Actually bowed. Warriors with battle scars and weapons that could level buildings, bowing to a sweaty human hauler with an empty canteen. The kid's parents wept when they saw their son. The mother embraced Blake so hard he thought his ribs might crack. The father pressed his forehead against Blake's and whispered thanks in a language Blake didn't speak but somehow understood anyway. Then the drums started. Deep, resonating drums that echoed off the canyon walls. The elder stood on a raised platform and spoke in the Draconid tongue, her voice carrying across the camp. Blake caught enough words to understand the gist. Water bearer. Ashkeeper's debt. Human. Forever bond. The Draconids roared their approval, a sound that shook the ground beneath Blake's feet. Within hours, the message went out across communication channels. Draconid clans throughout the sector heard the story. A human gave everything to save a child. A human triggered the ancient debt. A human showed them what they'd forgotten in their centuries of isolation. The Galactic Council received the transmission that evening. Blake saw the recording later. Council members from a dozen species, all looking confused and concerned. The Valkyrie ambassador kept asking for clarification. The Thornback representative demanded to know if this was a military threat. The Draconid speaker was calm. Simple. Direct. Humanity has honored us with sacrifice. We honor them with loyalty. From this day forward, Draconid strength serves human cause. Our warriors are their warriors. Our worlds are their worlds. This is not negotiation. This is not treaty. This is blood oath, older than your council, deeper than your laws. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Species that had tried for decades to secure Draconid alliances watched in disbelief as the Dragonkin pledged themselves to humanity. All because one guy couldn't walk past a dying kid. Blake heard the news while sitting by a fire in Rockfall Camp, drinking water that the Draconids insisted on providing. Premium stuff, filtered and chilled. They'd given him enough supplies for a month. "This is insane," he muttered to the kid, who'd barely left his side. "I just shared some water." The kid, who'd started calling himself Canteen, as some kind of honor name, shook his head. "You gave everything. Most species can't even imagine doing that. They think of cost-benefit. Risk-reward. But you just did it. Because it was right. Any decent person would have." "Exactly," Elder Rothka said, settling beside the fire. Her old eyes reflected the flames. That is why we follow humans now. You're all crazy enough to be decent. Blake looked at his empty canteen, now decorated with draconid honor marks that the camp's artisan had carved into the metal. He thought about his grandfather. About walking through deserts. About how humans survived not because they were strongest, but because they gave a damn. I really just wanted to deliver some medical supplies, he said quietly. The elder's laugh rumbled through the night. You delivered something far more valuable, water bearer. You delivered hope. Blake still had a 3-day walk ahead of him. No water. Scorching heat. And now half the draconid camp wanted to escort him. No, he told Elder Rothka for the 5th time. I appreciate it, but I work alone. Always have. You will die without water. Probably not. Blake checked his pack, making sure the medical supplies were secure. Humans are pretty good at not dying. It's kind of our thing. The elder looked skeptical. Most species did when humans talked about survival. They saw humanity's lack of natural weapons, lack of armor, lack of environmental resistance, and assumed humans were fragile. They never understood that human strength wasn't in what they had. It was in what they could figure out. Blake left at dawn, the draconids watching him go like he was walking to his execution. The kid, Canteen, had cried. Blake promised he'd come back through this route. It was a promise he meant to keep. The first day wasn't so bad. Blake knew the tricks. He hiked in the early morning before the suns peaked. Found shade during the worst heat. Kept his breathing steady, his pace controlled. Sweating was good. Sweating meant his body was working. He just had to trust the process. He found a cactus-like plant around midday. The locals called them spikewells. Nasty things with thorns that could punch through leather. But inside? Moisture. Not much, maybe a cup's worth, but enough. Blake used his knife to carefully extract the pulp, squeezing the liquid into his mouth. It tasted like battery acid and regret. He swallowed it anyway. By evening, he'd covered maybe 20 kilometers. Found a rocky overhang to sleep under. No fire. Didn't need one. The desert stayed warm even after dark. He chewed on a protein bar and thought about Earth. About human history. About all the impossible things his species had done just by being too stubborn to quit. The second day was harder. His lips cracked. His tongue felt thick. But Blake had trained for this. Grew up in conditions that made other species uncomfortable. Every human had that advantage. Earth wasn't a paradise world. It was a death planet that happened to grow things, and humans had learned to thrive there anyway. He found morning dew on the rocks. Licked it off like his grandfather taught him. Undignified? Sure. Effective? Absolutely. He spotted a depression in a dried riverbed where water might collect underground. Dug down half a meter with his hands and found damp sand. Sucked the moisture from it. Not pleasant, but survival rarely was. That night, he made it to a way station. Abandoned, like everything else out here, but it had a broken water recycler. Blake spent 2 hours fixing it with spare parts from his pack and pure human determination. By midnight, he had half a liter of questionable but drinkable water. He'd make it now. No doubt. Meanwhile, across the sector, the alliance was taking shape. Human colonies started reporting draconid ships in orbit. Not threatening. Protecting. The Dragonkin had mobilized their fleets, vessels that hadn't left their home systems in 50 years. They positioned themselves around human settlements like guardians, asking nothing in return. Pirates who'd been harassing human freight convoys suddenly found themselves facing draconid interceptors. The first engagement lasted about 90 seconds. The pirates surrendered immediately. Word spread fast after that. Touch human ships, face the dragons. Nobody wanted that smoke. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions. Ambassadors demanded explanations. The Velkari were particularly upset. They'd been trying to secure a draconid trade agreement for decades. Now humans had a military alliance, and all it cost was some water? Human diplomats scrambled to understand what they'd stumbled into. Admiral Patricia Reeves, head of Earth's colonial defense, met with draconid war leaders at a neutral station. She'd prepared speeches about mutual benefit and strategic cooperation. She never got to use them. We don't want your resources, the draconid commander told her bluntly. We don't want your technology. We want to stand beside you because your people know what honor means. One guy shared his water, Reeves said carefully. That's not exactly a foreign policy. That's exactly what it is. The commander's eyes gleamed. Other species negotiate, calculate, trade advantage for advantage. Your hauler gave everything to save a child he didn't know, from a species he'd never met, expecting nothing in return. Show me another species that does that. Reeves thought about it. Thought about human history. About firefighters running into burning buildings. About Coast Guard rescues in hurricane seas. About strangers pulling people from car wrecks. About every random act of human decency that made no logical sense but happened anyway. That's just what we do, she said quietly. We know. That's why we're here. The alliance solidified over the following weeks. Not through treaties or contracts. Through actions. Draconids showed up at human colonies and started helping. Helped dig wells. Helped build infrastructure. Helped defend against threats. They didn't ask for payment. The concept seemed to confuse them. You helped our child, they said. Now we help you. This is how bonds work. Human psychologists studied it. Called it fascinating. Called it unprecedented. Called it a cultural phenomenon. Blake called it something else when he finally heard about it: exhausting. He reached Wellspring Outpost on the third day, sunburned and tired but alive. The station manager took one look at him and immediately started fussing. You look half dead. Only half? I'm doing better than I thought. Blake dropped the medical supplies on the counter. As ordered. On time. We heard what you did. The Draconid thing. The water. The oath. Blake shrugged. Just helped a kid. Just helped a kid, the manager repeated, shaking his head. And accidentally created the strongest alliance in the sector. Humans, man. You're all absolutely insane. Blake thought about arguing. Then he thought about his empty canteen, now decorated with alien honor marks. Thought about a kid named Canteen who was alive because sometimes the right choice and the smart choice weren't the same thing. Yeah, he admitted. We really are. 6 months passed, and the galaxy learned something important. Humans and Draconids were a terrible combination if you were on the wrong side of them. Blake went back to hauling cargo. Tried to, anyway. Hard to stay anonymous when half the sector called you waterbearer and the other half wanted to interview you about unprecedented interspecies relations. He ignored most of it. Just kept doing his job. Moving supplies, helping where he could, walking through deserts because someone had to. But the kid, Canteen, he was different. The young Draconid became obsessed with humans. Not just Blake. All of them. He wanted to understand the species that produced someone who'd give away their survival for a stranger. His parents tried to discourage it at first. Focus on your studies, they said. Learn our history, our traditions. But Canteen had questions that Draconid history couldn't answer. Why did humans help when it hurt them? Why did they bond with creatures they just met? Why did they choose compassion over logic? So they let him go to Earth. First Draconid student ever accepted to a human university. He picked Arizona State. Wanted to study in the desert, he said. Wanted to understand the environment that shaped Blake's people. The day he arrived, the campus lost its mind. A 3-meter dragon person walking through the student center, trying to figure out how to use a vending machine. Videos went viral within hours. But after the initial shock wore off, something remarkable happened. Students just accepted him. Invited him to study groups. Showed him around. Taught him about human culture. One kid from the basketball team nicknamed him Scales and it stuck. Within a month, Canteen had more friends than he knew what to do with. He studied human history obsessively. The migrations across continents. The ships crossing oceans. The moon landings. The colony ships. He read about wars and peace treaties. About disasters and rescue efforts. About humans doing impossible things because they refused to accept the word impossible. But what fascinated him most were the small stories. The everyday acts that never made headlines. Neighbors helping neighbors. Strangers pulling people from burning cars. Communities rebuilding after storms. Teachers spending their own money on supplies. Volunteers working in shelters. Random people being decent just because. Your species is insane, he told his roommate, a geology major named Tyler who'd somehow become his best friend. You help each other constantly. Even when it costs you. Even when you get nothing back. Tyler looked up from his textbook. I mean, yeah? What else would we do? Most species calculate the benefit first. Risk versus reward. Cost versus gain. That sounds exhausting. It's logical. Maybe. Tyler shrugged. But logic doesn't warm you up at night, you know? We're social creatures. We survive by taking care of each other. Always have. Canteen thought about Blake. About an empty canteen and a choice that made no logical sense. Your species conquered a death world by being illogically kind to each other. Pretty much, yeah. Meanwhile, the alliance was growing stronger. Not through politics or economics. Through friendship. Draconids stationed at human colonies didn't just protect them. They integrated. Learned human customs. Celebrated human holidays. Started understanding humor and sarcasm, though puns still confused them. Human kids played with Draconid younglings. Families invited dragonkin to barbecues. It was weird and wonderful and completely unprecedented. The Galactic Council watched nervously. Two species that valued honor over profit, bonds over efficiency, compassion over calculation. Together they were a force that couldn't be threatened or bribed or manipulated. They just cared about each other. Made the other species deeply uncomfortable. It's not natural, the Valkyrie ambassador complained during a session. Alliances are built on mutual benefit. Trade agreements. Strategic advantage. This is based on emotion. Yeah, the human representative said. That's kind of our specialty. Blake heard about all of it secondhand. He was on Frontier Station Beta when Canteen finally tracked him down. The kid was bigger now, healthier, scales gleaming with proper care and good food. He wore a human college hoodie that someone had custom-made for his frame. Arizona State, with a modified mascot that looked suspiciously dragon-like. Water-bearer, Canteen said formally, then immediately dropped it. Blake. I need to tell you something. You doing okay, kid? I'm learning about humans. About Earth. About how your people survived. Canteen's eyes were intense. You didn't save me because of some cultural obligation. You didn't do it for political gain. You didn't even think about it, did you? Blake leaned against the station wall, tired from another long haul. Not really. You needed help. I could help. Simple as that. That's what I thought. That's what makes humans terrifying and beautiful at the same time. Canteen pulled something from his bag. Blake's old canteen, the one he'd given away, now engraved with intricate draconid honor marks. I want to return this. It's yours. Keep it. Looks better on you. I will keep it. But I'm also going to earn it. Canteen straightened up, looking determined. I'm going to spend my life studying human compassion. Teaching my people. Showing the galaxy what you showed me. That sometimes the strongest thing you can do is give everything away. Blake felt something catch in his throat. He cleared it awkwardly. That's a big goal, kid. I learned from the best. Canteen smiled, an expression that looked strange on a dragon face but somehow worked. Humans don't calculate kindness. They just do it. I'm going to make sure everyone knows that. I'm going to make sure nobody forgets what you did. Blake thought about his grandfather. About walking through deserts. About all the small choices humans made every day that seemed insignificant but rippled outward like stones dropped in water. It wasn't just me, he said quietly. That's what humans do. All of us. We see someone who needs help, we help. We see someone suffering, we care. It's not special. It's just who we are. I know, Canteen said. That's exactly why my people will stand with yours forever. Because you're all insane enough to be good. News feeds across the galaxy later reported it simply, Draconid-Human Alliance strengthens. But those who understood, those who'd heard the story, they knew the truth. The strongest bonds aren't forged in council chambers or signed in treaties. They are born in deserts, in moments of choice, when someone decides that a stranger's life is worth everything. Blake Torres went back to hauling cargo. But now, wherever humans went, dragons followed. Not as servants or allies of convenience. As brothers. As family. All because one tired hauler couldn't walk past a dying kid without giving away his whole canteen. Sometimes the galaxy changes with wars and treaties. Sometimes it changes with a single act of kindness. Humans understood that. Now, so did the Draconids.